Hello, I'd like to go over some fluvial or river processes and how those help shape the landscapes that we see around streams and rivers. First important concept to keep in mind is that moving water has energy, and that energy picks up sediment, which are small pieces of material, small particles of rock or dirt. And so that sediment is picked up, and we call that erosion. So the water erodes, and the sediment then is transported by the water. And we see here three basic categories of sediment, depending on the size of the sediment. The bottom one, or the bigger particles, are called bed load. They travel along the bottom of the stream, and they're basically, we have they're either being dragged, that's traction, or jumping on the bottom, that's saltation. The other two loads or sediment loads are suspended load, which are very tiny particles. You can kind of almost see them here in this picture. They very tiny particles that are not big enough to sink to the bottom, but they basically float on the water. When you see a river that looks brown, what you're seeing is a suspended load, because that would make the water look turbid or not clear. And then finally we have the dissolved load, and that is chemically dissolved, meaning minerals. Maybe think, if you add salt to water, the salt just kind of disappears, but it's still there because basically the salt has dissolved or chemically become part of the water. Okay. So those are the three basic types of sediment that streams and rivers carry with them, that they have eroded away. However, when the river slows down, it will lose energy and release the sediment. Okay, let's talk about floodplains. A floodplain is an area where that a river regularly floods. Usually this would be a fairly flat area with a river that is a higher order river, one that's flowing relatively slowly and has begun to meander. Meander means it's going back and forth in these snake-like loops. Okay, and rivers that are flowing slowly tend to do that. That are flowing on a fairly flat area. So the river will flood occasionally, because the supply of water, during springtime or in places where there's no melt off, additional water comes down, and the river may overflow its banks and cover the area that we call the floodplain. The water that is flooding has sediment, and once it overflows the banks, the water slows down and releases its sediment. So the floodplain regularly gets a new layer of sediment that we call alluvium. Right? The sediment that is deposited by flowing streams is alluvium, that is deposited on the flood bank. And this is one of the reasons that floodplain areas are good agricultural areas. Here in this picture we can see all the fields, because the sediment or alluvium that is deposited has, we talked about dissolved load, has minerals, and the suspended load also has nutrients that plants need. And so floodplains tend to be great places, some of the most fertile land to grow crops. They may not be the best places to live because you can get flooded.